Episode 2. Welcome to About Storytelling. And this is going to be the Cyberpunk Edge Runners.
Cyberpunk in general, I think.
That's fair. Because I think there is definitely... they overlap a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Location, predominantly.
Yeah.
But,
it was one of my gripes about it, actually. Watching the series, a lot of the sounds are identical with the game, and the locations felt like they were just straight traced out of scenes from the game. Like they played the game, took a screenshot, and drew over it.
So, yes and no. There's one of the most recent updates for the game, they actually took locations from the show and changed them in the game to look more like they look from the show.
That's crazy.
Something like the skylines and stuff, they altered them a little bit to look more like the Edge Runners.
A lot of the community modding support was already on the path to doing some of that.
Yeah, well, there's crazy amounts of mods for the game now. But they've just put in all the assets and stuff from the show, so you can roleplay as the characters, I guess. And I'm like, barely ever see a character, but I get it.
Yeah,
whatever works, I guess.
True.
It was a very interesting comparison between the two media, right? Because the video game itself obviously was met with a lot of hostility. A lot of people were like, "This is not acceptable." Blah 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 blah. Me personally, I didn't really have an issue with how the game ran. Yes, it was below average for sure.
And you're not even playing it on a high performance machine.
No, neither.
You're playing it on a gaming laptop as well.
Yeah. So for me, it was all these people that had the top end computers, and they're like, it's not running perfect. I'm
dropping a frame.
It's running great for me.
Yeah, because that was a problem I had.
I guess it was the same for console people as well, because consoles were just unplayable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got stuck and it killed my motivation to play through the story. I got up to Pan Am.
The introduction to Pan Am?
No, a little bit in. Okay. And there's a sequence where you have a ride along with her, where you have a conversation.
There's a few of those.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you which one it was, but it was. My guess is somewhere in the middle of her arc.
Fair enough.
And the game bricked in such a way that it was unrecoverable.
Yeah, that's pretty lame.
I would have to start a new save, and I was like, I really don't want to do that. I literally because I was really into quick hacking. I spec'd all my stuff into quick hacking. I just kind of hit my power spike where I was actually fighting and using that instead of shooting people.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is sick. I'm really enjoying combat right now. Game bricks. I'm like, I don't want to fucking grind all the way back to this point again. And it just kind of killed it for me. And I tried to come back to it as well and geek around with spec mods to make the game look pretty. And I just can't.
Yeah, I think so. I played through twice. Before any of the modding support or anything really came out. I enjoyed both playthroughs a lot.
Did you do entirely different?
Yeah. Entirely different builds. Also just gender swapped both times because I was why not? And different life paths as well. I did Corpo the first time, and I did the biker one for the second playthrough. Although I can't even remember what it's called. I just didn't really find the I'm from the streets sort of one. I was just
yeah, okay. That's fair.
It just felt like there was enough of those characters already, but adding an extra one sort of just I don't know. It was very interesting to see how far different the character perspectives were on the world of Night City between the anime and the TV, the anime and the game.
Yeah.
In the game, everything's sort of got a degree of reverence to it. It's this place is beautiful. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
all of these tremendous figures and stuff are plaster
idolized. Yeah, but also a lot of the horrible things about the place they still say are fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll die not a hero, you'll die famous or something, and that's something to be aspiring to.
Whereas in the anime, everything's sort of chill until you get your first sort of interaction with a cyber psycho. Or the whole cyber psycho thing is a very tonal shift in the storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, the music changes, even the art style's like that slight bit skewed off.
Yeah.
So it just feels like you're watching something different, which is not bad, because it sort of separates the two narratives, right? It's like here's the gritty realism of, like, Night City as a whole, and here's, like, David's story.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, like, very interesting, and that's what made that anime feel really good. Like, the combat was very, very fast-paced and jagged, but the narrative parts and, like, the romance and all that sort of stuff was, like, soft and genuine. So it made David feel like a real character, and made his surrounding cast also sort of feel like real characters as well.
Yeah, it felt like a lot of the things that he did were genuinely motivated by his flaws.
Yeah, and, like, relatable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, V is sort of, like, a cool character, right? But you never really sort of know what their motivation is. Yeah. It's like, aside from, I want to live, like, same, bro. Like, it's like, why? Yeah, you could live anywhere. You don't have to do this crazy shit. Like,
you live out in the desert with Pan Am. You don't have to
exactly. You could just jump in with the Aldecaldos and just go off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're gonna die eventually, but so is everyone. Like, it just felt very, very tonally different between the two shows, because David, it sort of felt like he was a victim of his environment, where he's like, he had opportunities to be, you know, like, successful and, like, a corporate and all that sort of stuff, and then his mum gets murdered, and everything that he ever had is just gone.
Well, even before that, they were like, his barriers that David experiences to live the ideal life that he's trying to push into, like him being poor and the other students treating him because of that.
Yeah.
And then, like, you sort of get to see the setup of what that path could have looked like, and then he gets opportunities to try and stay on that path, but then also, like, all these things constantly happen that, like, negatively push him away towards the path that he ultimately ends up on.
Yeah.
So it does feel more like, I wouldn't say motivation, but it does feel more like a proper arc.
Yeah.
Whereas my issue with V was, like, I did the Corpo backstory, and then pretty much as soon as you leave that life, everything that you do after that feels like those things didn't matter.
Pretty much.
Or were irrelevant.
That is one thing that sort of stuck with, doesn't matter what storyline or, like, what background you chose, it sort of was irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like, aside from, like, the rare line of dialogue, it just sort of didn't really matter. Which,
Arasaka. I know something about Arasaka. Oh, great.
Yeah, like, it just...
Same, dude.
Yeah, it sort of just... It seemed largely irrelevant which line you picked, and I felt like there was more you could have done with that.
Yeah.
Whether it be, like, the people that you can interact with, like, for example, like, Pan Am, right? Yes, she's probably one of the best characters in the game. Close to, like, next to, like, River and Carrie. But I felt like your interaction with her was very... Like, I understand she's an outcast from her, like, gang temporarily, but it felt like if you were of the same, like, background as her, you guys would, like, gel more and get along. Whereas if you're, like, a corpo, she wouldn't trust you at all. No fucking way. It's like, oh, you work for, like, the corporations and stuff. That's everything that my fucking group is against. Like, why would I ever trust you? Why would anybody realistically trust someone?
Even as a reject from that corpo life, you still have that stink on you for life. And so I feel like it would have been really cool that if they could have split it up like that with the different backstories that you pick.
They could have even just made that the
companion
that you have made that the difficulty scale, right? It's like, if you're from the street, you know, you've got that reputation. Everyone's like, I've known this kid since he was, like, you know, this big, yada yada. I trust him, etc. And then you're like the person from out of town, right? That's the Aldecaldos group.
Yeah.
And so you're sort of like a blow-in. Everybody's like, not sure if I trust him. Let him, like, work himself up. And then the third one is, I'm from this town, but I've been involved with the corpos. Exactly. And so everyone's sort of like, is he just working for the corpos, trying to, like, him or her, whatever. Are they just working for the corpos undercover to try and, like, get info on us? Like, are they trying to set us up from Arasaka or something like that? Which honestly I think would have been, that's a gimme. Like, that's a freebie. That's a really good fucking opportunity. But, you know, they sort of decided to make it irrelevant, which I get. You know, like
it's really easy to make stuff relevant as you move into new chunks, especially player interaction with the game. And I think a lot of choices that game devs make when they're putting these kinds of things into video games is making the player feel like they're impacting the game, whether it is directly right now in this conversation or something that a character remembers that you've said, or you flexing like a thing that you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's completely irrelevant, and it's like really easy to make it feel less irrelevant. But when you've played these kind of games a few times, and you go into your second playthrough, and you pick a different dialogue option, and the guy replies to the same thing, you're like, oh, you only had this many minutes in the booth with the voice actor, huh?
Yeah. It does make it feel very like. Obviously, like the two different media are so like vastly different.
Yeah.
That it's like it's hard to compare them in like a scale where like you can measure all of the things that matter.
Yeah.
Because like in an anime, a whole bunch of things matter.
Yeah.
That don't matter in video games, right? Like in video games, pacing is relevant. It is sort of relevant in like anime storytelling as well.
Yeah.
But the type of pacing and the way you control it is very, very different. Because
the player is able to slow it down.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Whereas
Whereas
in anime, you can't do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can. It's by pausing, but like, it's sort of
you
like
can't go and be like, you know what, Rebecca's the greatest character. I just want to hear about her for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a filler episode. I'm ready.
So it's like in that context, the pacing is like very, very different structurally.
Yeah.
In terms of telling a narrative, so like, I think both sides sort of did it pretty well. But the thing is a lot of the best things about the video game is background stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is a problem.
A lot of the world building was really good, and a lot of the world building in the anime fell a little flat for me. And I wasn't sure if that was because they were expecting me to know it already from playing the game.
Probably.
Or some of it was passed on for like focusing on developing the characters.
Probably.
Which I feel like it's more the second one, because they did have really good arcs.
Yeah.
For the characters.
I felt that like after I watched Edge Runners, I sort of felt like the reception that it got was surprising. I was like, I was surprised that so many people liked it.
Really? Well, the only reception I saw about it was people being horny for it.
That's fine.
I didn't really see people saying it was good or bad.
I mean,
they were just like, this is my waifu. I'm committed to this.
That's fine. That's the same thing as saying it's good. Like,
yeah.
If you're like acknowledging characters in stuff, it's very rare that you're like, this thing's shit tier.
Yeah.
Waifu though. Like,
yeah. Well.
I mean, sometimes, but like people are on it, whatever. I felt that the reception that it got was surprising, but I was like, imagine if they'd just taken their time to do Cyberpunk right.
Yeah.
If they'd just been like, okay, look, I know we've delayed this X amount of times, but we need to. Like, we just have to. I'd rather them just be transparent and just be like, look, it's not done.
Yeah.
We need like X months to do it.
Imagine you're like, they put out a hype trailer, and the hype trailer shows out how amazing things are. And instead, CDPR just does the opposite, where they're like, look, here's a trailer of the reason why we need a fucking 6-month delay. Yeah. And the game is just literally what we got on launch.
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, okay.
You're like, fix it. Go for it. I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the time companies, especially like CDPR, have such an exceptional reputation before this, and one mistake. Like, one mistake of letting this game out, just everybody's suddenly like doubters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Witcher 3 wasn't that great when it released. Like, it had bugs too. Not to the same extent as CP, but like... they're very different games, obviously.
But the scope is similar.
Definitely. Like, the size of it is very
Whereas,
similar.
like, CDPR releasing Cyberpunk, they would have known how long it should have taken with the amount of stuff that they had, when the scope is pretty similar to the last project.
To be fair, having played both of those games for like a reasonable amount of time, The Witcher feels so much bigger.
Okay.
Like, just the size of...
Cyberpunk does have like a really dense area and a really empty area.
Yeah. Yeah, like...
Witcher felt like way more evenly spaced around the map in comparison.
Pretty much, yeah. But the thing for me was that The Witcher had like locations that felt tonally different. Whereas like everything in Cyberpunk felt like just an extension of Night City.
Yeah.
Even the desert, you're like, this is just the desert of Night City. You know what I mean? Like, whereas like in The Witcher, you've got like Velen, Novigrad, and all of them feel like the buildings are a little bit different in all of the cities. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same architecture repeated everywhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, the DLCs, we haven't had a DLC for Cyberpunk yet, so we can't really...
It's coming soon.
Yeah, Guns of Liberty or something. Phantom Liberty.
Yeah, they had a trailer for it.
Sorry.
Did you watch most of the Game Awards?
No, I watched like 3 things.
So, Edgerunners lost out to Arcane in the best game to TV adaptation.
Fair enough. I still have not watched Arcane.
It's good.
That's great. I don't care. I mean, like, Dragon's Blood was horrible and is still shit. I still watched it, but like, I'm like watching it being like, oh man. It's mostly I'm watching it so I can be like, alright, what skins are they going to use from this fucking show?
That's kind of funny. I think Arcane was good agnostic of League of Legends. I think knowing the characters and play the game, it didn't matter. But I think it's interesting because Cyberpunk is like way truer to game to show. Yeah. Whereas like, obviously they're not making a fucking TV show on Summoner's Rift, right? Whereas Edgerunners, you could... felt like somewhere between Persona 5 and Cyberpunk, where you could have literally just played the anime as a visual novel or something. Yeah. Right?
I mean, I think like the discussion about Cyberpunk having a second season of Edgerunners.
Why?
There's so many people just being like,
I cried enough the first time.
Like, is there going to be a season 2? And I'm like...
With who?
Did you not watch season 1? Like, did you not see what happened in the last episode?
Yeah.
Like...
That felt pretty final. What were you guys looking for closure on?
It felt like it concluded. It's like being like, hey, can we have a Death Note season 3?
Yeah.
And it's like, guys... Did you not watch season 2? Like,
or the last fucking 5 episodes already dog shit. Why would you want another
exactly.
season?
It's like, please, just let it die. Let it die. It's done its thing.
That's such a weird request.
And I was like, look, I could see them being like, here's a video game based on David. You know what I mean?
Or adding a DLC where he becomes playable.
Sure, that's fine. Even if not...
I feel like if they did more seasons, it would have to be whole new sets of characters just in the same location.
Pretty much.
It would just be like, Edgerunners is a gang. It's just like gangs in Night City doing stuff. Yeah. Which I think would be fine.
Like,
I don't think
you can have like cameo drops and stuff, and that's fine.
Imagine, that would be cool actually. Like, this is the Corpo one, or whatever. And then, like, because of the Arasaki University. And we have like a new story where it starts out with you started with it was Aldecaldo, the Avocado Gang.
That's one of them, the Avocado Gang.
Hang out with the Avocado Gang, and then you work your way into the city. But like the living on the outskirts and the difficulties that comes with growing up as a kid in the outskirts, and then being forced into the gang because that's the only life you know, and then ending up doing the same kind of arc that they do, right? Or what's the third? Because there was 3.
There's Street Kid, Corpo, and the White Gang.
I'd argue Dave is kind of a street kid then.
Yeah.
Was shown from.
But the thing is, right?
And then Lucy is kind of just Corpo.
If you look on paper, it's like the street kid and the biker gang is sort of the same thing. Yeah. Like, it's slightly different, but it's very similar.
Yeah. What if you had to? Let's pretend that those two were the same thing, and we had Corpo. What would be a different third one that you would instead have? Because it really doesn't feel like there's that. Like, for example, to use D&D as an allegory, you have your it's like several different classes that each feel like super different, unique. Yeah. Which comes with probably its own, backstory inclinations. In this, you've got as a character in it, you've got like your tech guy or your muscle guy or your, you know what I mean.
So, Street Kid, you're like proficient in lying, that sort of stuff, being like stealthy, sleight of hand, that sort of thing. And you're like, your way around weapons, but you're not like military around weapons. You know what I mean? I think the way you could have done it is had like corpo. It's like your tech, you're involved, you're like politics, that sort of stuff, right? You're very official, straight. And those are like two ends of the scale, right? In the middle, you have the soldier, right? You have the discipline, similar to that of an Arasaka person, but you also have like the training in violence and like espionage potential of the other side, right?
That would be interesting. How do you go from being a soldier in something like Militech to being the free agent?
Exactly. That's why it's interesting. Because it's like, how do I take what is essentially like a very official job and like how do I make this person into a criminal, essentially?
It would be cool if it was something like you're doing your regular job, a cyber psycho attacks your unit, all the other guys in the unit are killed, you're assumed to be zeroed, and then you brought back or whatever.
Max Tech's the group that hunts down cyber psychos.
Yeah.
You could be like ex Max Tech or Militech or one of the other, armed groups. Because like a bunch of the Elder Cali guys, they're all like droppers. I can't remember.
Maybe that wasn't chosen as a backstory because of the way it interferes with the overarching plotline that they've got.
Maybe, but like, so.
But if you were Militech, you fucking with Arasaka stuff
Makes
wouldn't be that much of a stretch.
But it's like you would have experience with it. You'd just be like, I know how to. Like, I've literally been fighting these guys in the shadows for years. But it's also like it opens up your range of contacts, right? To get higher caliber weapons. It also gives you an in with the Elder Caldos, right? Like that sort of middle ground makes the most sense to me because of how far your social interaction web goes, right? You've interacted with corpos all your life. You've done jobs for them. That's what Militech does. So you would have an in with many corpos. You've also done interactions with people on the street, right? Because, like, you got to get your weapons from somewhere.
Yeah.
And, like, sometimes it's crews lifting them and you just get them brought in. Militech and that themselves, they've shown multiple times. What's her name? Stout? Oh my god. She's in the... Like, when Jackie's still alive in Cyberpunk.
Is she the one that you go and meet and she's got the guy in the trunk and you can have sex with her later?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
For absolutely...
research purposes.
I know these things coincidentally. No, I found out that you can have sex with this character accidentally just by talking to her a bunch, and you talk to her later on.
And she gives you a phone call. She's
and
like, hey, come to my motel.
Yeah, I was like...
No-tell.
I was like, okay, didn't expect this.
Yeah.
You didn't like me 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, she doesn't like you then either.
But yeah, Meredith Stout.
Meredith Stout, that's it.
Yeah.
She's like very corrupt.
Oh,
like comparatively. No. She works for Militech.
Because when we're talking about having a character with Militech background, she's exactly who I'm thinking of
exactly.
all the time.
That's what I mean.
She would be like such an important character.
And imagine that interaction, but when you're like former Militech.
Yeah. She's
just like, nah.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be here. Actually, interesting thing about Meredith Stout, if you choose to side with the other guy and like get her like killed, you can actually find her body with her legs are like in a cement block and she's underwater.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She's like her head's shaved bald. She's like handcuffed and stuff, and her like her legs are like in a block of concrete. It's just off the coast of Pacifica.
That's really random.
Yeah, I know.
It's like such a intense attention to detail for a game that struggles to do the main thing.
I know, right? Like, that was one of those things where I saw it, I was like, wow, really? And I had to go look. Yeah. So I purposely stopped okay, so I could, like, betray her and go find it.
How funny.
And it was just, like, a really random thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's in a part of the map that you would otherwise never go to. There's no mission there.
It's like a pier or something?
No, it's just, like, there's, like, wave breakers along the coast of Pacifica. And you can, like, jump off the edge into the water. It's pretty deep. You swim down and you just see she's just sort of, like, floating there. You're just like, fuck, okay.
Wow.
Like, if you didn't know she was there, there's no reason for you to go there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, it was just very interesting. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Crazy shit. There's also a theory running around about... Oh, I know. I mean, it's been running around forever. But it's that all of the flashbacks and stuff you see from Johnny aren't true. Like, it's all based on him. It's all him lying. It's his perception of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like he's trying to paint himself in like a more heroic capacity.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me that much.
I would have just preferred them just come out and just be like, he is evil. Like, he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
I would have just rather them do that, because, like, that's the thing, right? Is you have the entire game where they're like he's trying to convince you that he's a good guy, or he's like not a total piece of shit.
Has Keanu Reeves played a villain? Like a real scumbaggy big villain type?
I don't think so.
Because I feel like that would
break typecasting for him.
It would feel off.
But like, it's the best kind of off. Because, like, we as consumers are
maybe it's like a huge reveal, like later
that's
on.
That's what I mean. Like, at the very end. The very end of the game. Because, like, there's a few different ways you can end the game. There's, like, 4 endings? 5 endings? I can't remember. One of them is you just... But, you know, power to you if you do that.
You can do that at any point in the game. I wouldn't call it an ending.
True. No, it's actually an ending of the game.
Right. You get through the prologue, and then you're like... Your thing's corrupted, and you go to the Ripper Doc, and it's like, just shoot yourself. And you're like,
okay.
Alright. Game of the year.
Completed in 5 minutes, game of the year.
Speedrun game of the year.
Yeah.
Fuck, that would be so funny.
Well, that's in, there's one of those in, oh my god, Far Cry? With, oh my god, I can't remember which Far Cry it is.
Is it where you die of malaria to end the game?
No, so it's the one with, is it Min or something like that? He's the Chinese guy with like the mohawk or something. He wears like a pink suit, right? He's like the main antagonist of the game. At the start of the game, he's like, alright, you're like sitting down having dinner with him, and he's like, oh hey, I'm gonna go get these things, wait right here. And that's your opportunity to escape. But you can just wait right there. And he comes back and he's like, oh hey, you still here? Cool. Here's this stuff. And the game ends. I was just like, that's memes.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. But let's
back to Cyberpunk.
Let's circle back. I also want to cover, because I feel like we've covered a lot on the game.
Not so much on the anime.
I want to cover a lot on the anime. I'm gonna start it off with which girl's best girl? Because this is the primary discourse that I see.
To be honest,
on the internet.
I don't like any of them.
That's fair.
I actually find them all, like, they're all interesting in the capacity that they're different.
Yeah.
But, like, none of them are, like, wildly polarizing to me. Yeah. I'm not like, this one's suddenly better. It's like, each of them have their own unique flaws and their own unique, like, good bits. And I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. I didn't find any of them attractive, but Rebecca's personality is like exactly the chaotic goblin, the shit that I'm attracted to.
Yeah, I don't know. She just felt very young to me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I get it, that she's meant to be like the excitable, aggressive adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I didn't really love any of the characters. I wasn't like, yes, this is my character. Like, this is the relatable character.
I haven't had that problem with David. Because, so I, in the Noodle Shop podcast, they talk about Edge Runners. And they're like, this is the best thing ever. I love it so much. I'm like, okay. And then you were also like, have you fucking watched it yet after I recommended it to you? I'm like, no. I started watching it. I remember one of the things that they said was that it starts off pretty slow.
Yes.
And I'm watching the first episode. I'm like, fuck, this is a slog. Like a real slog to get through. And they just like shit on him all day. And the episode ends and I'm like,
what? Where?
Okay. And now, when does something
happen?
Not horrible happen to the main character, you know? So I found him really difficult to relate to. Like, only really maybe, like post-time skip, maybe like towards that midpoint where he's like starting to realize where pretty much everything he's doing is so that Lucy can chase her dream.
He like, gives up on everything that he wants.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not about me anymore, it's just about getting her.
He's kind of recognized that he's already too far gone.
Yeah.
But I also think
he has no self-worth.
Yeah. I think he's also realized he has no self-worth at that point.
Well, I think he starts, like, sort of buying into his addiction to the Chrome.
Yeah.
which is interesting considering he got to see his like mentor figure like sort of succumb to the same thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck it, whatever, let's do it. Like he just jumps in, like head first. He's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm doing this for the woman I love. And I'm like, I get it, brother. Go for it. You know, Yas Queen, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I resonated more with characters from the game.
Yeah.
Than I did with characters.
Yeah, I get that.
Which is like obviously a different time investment, and you get to pick who you hang out with. So
yeah, because I really liked the brain dance editor chick from the start. Judy
Alvarez.
Judy was the one that I spent all my time with.
Yeah.
And they have like a sequence where you go swimming underwater, and that was sick as fuck.
Those two are the most like they're probably the most
Judy and Panam.
Yeah. Most because they're chicks. They're also very engaging characters.
Feed the male gaze.
I mean, sure. I personally I found the storylines with River and Kerry Eurodyne really good. Kerry's one is just like kind of funny.
Yeah.
But there's like a sequence where you where you like meet on his producer's boat, and he just like starts playing like some guitar riff. It's a really cool guitar riff. Like it's just like very chill, and you're like sailing out on this boat. It's just like a very majestic moment. And then you guys crash the boat while you're fucking.
Yeah.
And then you you jump off the boat because it's on fire.
Yeah. But I think that's actually a good point. The way that the game allows you to slow down and enjoy a romantic moment with a big person. Like I felt the deep dive thing with Judy was like really insane.
Yeah. So all of the characters have one of those moments.
Yeah.
And they all come at different sections of the story. For Carrie, it's the very last thing you do.
Okay.
Right? Like that's the last thing in his like story arc.
Yeah.
And I guess it's similar to Judy.
Hers is like the second last thing.
One of the very last things you do. Panam is like the tank scene. Have you seen that one?
I'm not sure.
So basically, both of you get into a tank, and it's controlled by two people. So you're all like neurally connected. Similar to when you're with Judy, and she can like.
That's when you shoot down the transport.
No, it's later.
Oh, then no.
Yeah, that's when you're in her truck and you're like shooting.
Yeah, okay. That was the part that I got bricked on.
Yeah.
You just shut down.
So like later you guys like steal a tank.
Casually,
yeah. And you guys sort of have like a mind meld where you can like feel it's fucking whatever.
Okay.
There's also
okay. Then because we don't get that in the show. Like we
sort of do.
We get one moment with Lucy. We have the brain dance on the moon.
Yeah.
Which I felt was pretty close. I felt like they were trying to do something.
Yeah, that was.
They did muddy it like immediately afterwards, but
whatever. I don't feel like it needed too many things. So for
foreshadowing than a romantic moment together.
Sure, but like from our perspective, it's foreshadowing. Right?
Yeah.
From their perspective, it's a romantic moment.
Well, from David's perspective.
Sure, from David's perspective.
Which I guess is our perspective.
We're meant to be putting ourselves in that. But as like viewers further back, we're like, okay, this and like with our later knowledge, yes, it is something where you're just like, okay, this is this.
Yeah.
Whereas like in CP, you only get one of those things, really.
Yeah.
Because you can only romance one person at a time.
Because we didn't really get that for Rebecca, even though she kind of tries to present herself as like a.
But that's more telling of David as a character. He's like he knows what he wants and he's got it. So he's like it's the the whole blind man thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like they're so like focused on one thing, everything's going on around them, they just don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Two girls interested in you can't relate.
Yeah.
But there was one of the things, like, looking back on it now, early on, he sees Lucy a bunch of times, like, just on the street hanging around and stuff, and he has, like, a weird, I don't know, I don't think obsession is the correct thing, but he's kind of always looking to see if she's there.
Yeah.
And then he does finally catch her on the subway, and it's like, was this, like, is there some kind of ulterior motive? Was she intentionally planted there? Is this just something part of his subconscious when she lines up or something? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it felt weird to put her.
Yeah,
there.
I think that as a narrative choice was intentional to make us think that.
Yeah.
And so, like, we have that subconscious feeling she's playing him, she's trying to get something out of him. But, like, at the end, it's not the case. She's, like, hiding, and it's coincidence.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's like the creating a problem where there is none.
Yeah.
And it's intentionally just to create tension, not so much on screen, but more in our minds.
I think the other thing is that because they kept doing the false scenes of stuff that's indicative of his cyberpsychosis, and the scenes where Lucy is there but not there, early on before he has any crime, felt the same, which is why it was a bit odd, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is the JK, the brain dance editor that kind of tortures David a little bit. He kind of shows up as a motif, as a representation of David's cyberpsychosis, but in a way that it feels like he's responsible, but I don't think he's responsible.
No, I don't think he helped, but being one of the people that, like, you know, worked on that part of him, it's just like David's subconscious basically projecting an image onto his issue.
Yeah.
Which is fine, you know, that happens. That happens in real life too. People project their issues onto specific things, people.
Similar for Maine as well, because he saw there was like a scene where they both kind of saw something weird with that dude.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like some of the stuff that they did artistically felt like they were trying to portray a very, very specific feeling. Have you seen Paprika? Paprika's one that I felt like overlapped a lot, and it felt like it overlapped a lot with Ghost in the Shell as well. But in Paprika, the whole kind of thing is that everything is dissolving into dreams, and so all these weird projections from people's minds are basically taking over everything. And it culminates in this gigantic parade of insanity kind of coursing through Tokyo. And the cyberpsychosis felt like it was kind of doing the same thing, where it's like you're presented with a concept and then you go, oh, actually it's a false concept because this is a dream, sort of a thing. But then eventually they start to pile up until you realize that the whole thing is actually his complete cyberpsychosis or whatever. But because we're not constantly in just his point of view, we're also kind of a spectator at the same time. It's difficult to really know how far he's progressed into it or not.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you look at Cyberpunk, the game, and our interactions with cyberpsychos throughout that game, they're never anything close to what David was, right? They're just straight up hostile, aggressive.
Just gone. Far gone.
Which I feel like isn't great.
Well, him dying before he goes far gone is the heroic death that they wanted.
Sure.
In theory.
There is a part of that I want to talk about, actually. Adam Smasher. So in the game, he's always like, Adam's just a big badass.
The chrome boogeyman.
He's like, he's just like this big, psycho, scary man. And you never really see it. You know what I mean? It's like, Adam Smasher's coming, and then you fight him and you're just like, I don't give it a big deal. It's like, Johnny lost this guy? I'm like, how? Like, I folded this dude with, like, a wet paper towel. Like, yeah, literally. And then you see him in the anime and you're like, oh, that's what they're talking. And I'm like, where was this guy?
They also build that up as like really well, where they're like, oh my god, David's just done this thing. He just like blew up a whole battalion of like tanks and shit, like it was nothing. And then Adam Smasher shows up and he's like,
cute. Yeah, and he just folds him.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me that comparably the deeds that David did was so much more tremendous than anything V did.
Mm.
And yet David just gets folded.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Looking at the two fights, like V versus Adam Smasher and David versus Smasher, the fight between David and Adam felt just so one-sided.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Adam just completely different level. And yeah, okay, you could argue it's like they're both, cyber-based. Adam just has more experience, so you just, knew how to play around it, yada, yada, yada.
And, David had run out of
energy or whatever.
The fucking injections that he needs to stay alive, basically.
Sure, which is fine. But then you look at V, who's someone who has next to no enhancements for the most part. Comparatively, none.
Yeah.
Has 3 notable ones. It sort of doesn't make sense. And it's it makes sense purely if when you assault Arasaka, or you don't have to assault Arasaka, but one of the 3 endings is you can just attack Arasaka by yourself.
Yeah.
Or you can go with the Aldecaldos, or you can take Rogue and her son. And so when Rogue goes, Rogue dies. If you take the Aldecaldos, some of them die. If you go by yourself, nobody dies. You just have to walk through the entirety of Arasaka by yourself on 1 life. You don't get a respawn.
Okay.
And that's the hard ending, right? That's a fucking... Because the lobby alone has 5 Arasaka ninjas that are just brutally strong. They can kill you very easily straight away. You have to get through the whole thing, and then you get to the ending, and you have to fight Adam by yourself. And it's I guess you fight Adam by yourself either way. But...
Well, so narratively, something that Pokemon does, right, is that the story is the one time that you succeeded.
Sure.
Because every time that you failed is irrelevant because you try again, as if nothing had happened.
Sure.
So, in fighting Adam Smasher, the difficulty of it is the number of times you failed rather than the one time you succeeded.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Whereas in the anime, they can't portray it like that.
Sure.
Well, in theory, it's impossible because he didn't succeed at any time.
Exactly. Because I think, I was relatively well geared when I went and fought Smasher the first time. The second time, I sort of didn't bother. Because, the first time I did it, I killed him in about 2 minutes, which felt really underwhelming. So I was like, oh, okay. Maybe he's not the big boogeyman. Maybe there's another thing I have to fight. No, there's not. That's it. And I'm like, you're the baddest motherfucker in Night City, huh?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah. I'll take that crown. Thank you.
Not even. It's just my pinky finger.
So, hot take. I don't think he needed to be in the anime at all.
Adam?
Yeah. I think it would have been much more compelling if David, if the battle was David versus himself, basically. He does everything he can to rescue Lucy from the Fixer. He gets her out to a safe place. He pays fucking the driver, I can't remember his name, it's Falcon or something, to get her out. And she's like, I'm the only one that can save him. I could do a deep dive or I could do something. And the driver's just like, nah, dude. Either he becomes a cyber psycho and then everyone dies, or he kills himself because he realizes that's the only way to defeat the cyber psychosis. And then the final thing is literally him fighting himself. But it's the David before he becomes way chromed and jacked and shit versus the monstrosity that he becomes. Yeah. And I think that would have been way more impactful than here's Adam Smasher, a guy that we just in the anime you hear about one time. In the video game you obviously hear about it a bit more.
You see,
but then they're like, oh, this guy, the boogeyman is real, and you just don't care at all.
The fight felt kind of anticlimactic in the anime, but there is an interesting polarization between the two characters because Adam is a character who is notorious for getting Chrome because he wanted it, not because he needed it. He was just like, I can just do this, I'm going to. Whereas David felt very much like, I need this stuff to achieve everything I want.
Yeah.
So they're very similar characters in terms of like their what they are trying to do and how they look, obviously. But like their motivations are very, very different. So in some ways you could paint Adam Smasher as like the dark twin to David's character at the end.
Because Adam Smash also has no motivation either. He's just doing as he's told.
So the entirety of Cyberpunk as a whole comes back to the pen and paper tabletop game. Which, like, the original main character was Morgan Blackhand, who is, actually, interestingly, he's former Militech, which is, like, super cool. Also, maybe spoiler, I don't know. So, in Phantom Liberty, we're going to be interacting with NUSA, the new United States of America, NUSA, which is part of the group that Morgan Blackhand worked for.
Okay.
Morgan Blackhand disappeared. Similar to Johnny, he just disappeared. He was never reported dead, nobody was ever found. At the point of Cyberpunk, he'd be like 70, 80 maybe.
Okay.
Probably older, but irrelevant. I think we might be seeing some Morgan Blackhand, which is pretty baller. So the Morgan Blackhand is basically the guy who created the tabletop MMO, or the tabletop RPG. His character was Morgan Blackhand in the thing, and that's why it's like such a revered character throughout the game.
Yeah.
Like people talk, Morgan Blackhand, and it's like, bro, like it's just the creator joking himself off pretty much, which is funny. And I get it as like having been a DM before and being like, bang, here's a character that I played.
Here's my big fucking self-insert.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very funny.
Me and past me.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very funny. It's very funny. And I would love to see Morgan Blackhand because having read a lot of the stuff that Morgan did during his career, wildly interesting. Like, he's just a very compelling character because he has a similar ideology to Johnny, but not in the same, like, crazy terrorist perspective. He's more like, I've seen war, I know where that leads, and I'm going to do everything to avoid that.
Yeah.
But he does it with violence. But, like, he's like a solo operator. So a lot of groups, like we see, like, David's crew, right? They operate as a group. Similar to V. V has a crew as well, right? Morgan Blackhand had none of that. He's a solo. He goes through and does it by himself, which is like a very uncommon thing in Night City. Most people have like a team or a group around them.
Well, that's the whole, not Cyberpunk, what's the other one? Shadowrun. The whole Shadowrun thing where it's like, meet the fixer, get the job, build the team, do the heist or whatever. Yeah.
So it's, V is actually like, there's a few instances where V operates as she's operating or they are operating by themselves, and you interact with Rogue, and it's like, hey, do you have any work for me? And Rogue's like, no. He's like, what? Like, look at everything I've done. And Rogue's like, you're a solo. Like, the work that I can give you is not the same as the work I can give to a crew.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's so many more things involved in, like, a larger job that one person can't realistically do it all. And if I did give it to you, I'm taking it out of 4 people, 5 people, 10 people, whatever. You know what I mean? And, like, it's in the best interest of the client for me to give it to a group who's more likely to achieve it than one person who's just going to storm in there and kill everyone. Which I think is, like, interesting that the fixers specifically actually give a shit. I don't know if it's all fixers, but Rogue specifically, she actually gives a shit about her clients. Which
Faraday doesn't, obviously.
Well, for the most part, most of them don't.
Oh.
But, like, Rogue is meant to be, like, a badass. But she's a softie, which is funny. I don't know. It's just an interesting, like, an interesting tidbit about that character.
I do kind of like how the anime does follow that same kind of formula where even though David's kind of the fish out of water and he comes into the cyberpunk kind of lifestyle, it's still be part of the gang, get the fix of the Dixie gets the job, and it still runs through that, which is kind of like illustrating the core gameplay aspect of the universe.
Similarly, yeah.
But then also they've managed to weave in the other plot parts, like the Arasaka job where they captured Tanaka. They're like, we're able to tie this to David's backstory and like tie that up with other stuff in the foreshadow we did earlier with him being reaccepted into the...
As you would expect, there's lots of overlap between the video game and the anime.
Yeah.
In terms of just like narrative beats, as well as like background.
Yeah.
It is like watching V but on a different path, basically.
I'm pretty confident that Fem V's voice actor voices a character in the show.
That would not surprise me.
There's a few times that I've heard a voice and I'm like,
yeah.
That and fucking, is it Nolan North or the gruff dude who's plays the fucking gruff dude in every anime? I'm like, oh yeah.
Hey Nolsey, how's it going, mate?
I'm pretty sure he voices the driver.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean that's everything I got on Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I feel like we did cover like way more in the video game than the anime.
The thing is the amount of stuff that's on the video game so much more.
Is much more. Like, also, your ability to interact with it is much more.
Yeah, like my watch through of Edge Runners was some time ago. It was like when it came out.
Yeah, I finished watching.
Whereas yours was like this morning. So my sort of like knowledge of specific events is like limited to the critical points, which very different because you've got sort of like all the fresh.
More. Yeah, that's true. Like, I don't know. I feel like the arcs that they draw in it are really good. Like David's arc, like there's a few moments where you can really measure how far gone he is. Like when Rebecca's brother dies.
Yeah.
Maine offers his hands to David, and David's like, no, man. Whereas I feel like David at the end would have said yes to everything. But David at the end also got Maine's hands, which he did at the time, so that he wanted. So it is interesting to see how David literally builds himself up from nothing, both physically and by reputation, and becoming like the
both
leader
figuratively
of the group
and literally.
Yeah, so it does kind of have that. Like episode 1 is like David is the lowest of the low, and then you see the epic kind of rise.
The building of a hero.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily a hero, but
that's what it's meant to. It's what it's meant to emulate.
Yeah,
right. It's meant to emulate the training montage or the hero finding their strength.
Yeah, but then rather having like this big crescendo, he just kind of gets final bossed and can't load a save. Yeah,
which is fine because it shows like the reality of Night City, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're not the hero.
That and there's probably always a bigger fish, like in the same way.
I mean, there's not many fish bigger than Adam Smasher.
No.
Except V.
Yeah.
V,
big
I think.
Pro tag energy.
Yeah, like David's like, I'm the main character. Adam Smasher's like.
Yeah.
It's that meme. It's that meme with the giant white giants.
Yeah.
Where it's like, there's like a bigger one. This is always a bigger fish.
Yeah.
But who's the bigger fish than V? I guess that Johnny.
Yeah, or like Morgan or something.
I don't know. I hope that when when they show Morgan, that he's not. I don't want him to be like as he is portrayed. I want him to be like an old man. He's like learned from my mistakes. Like
and he's like a non-combatant at that point.
Yeah, like he's an old man. Like I would much rather him be like an old man sitting out on like a ranch out in the desert, and he's just like living on like a little house by himself.
It's done.
Yeah, like the Thanos treatment, right?
Yeah.
Where he's just like, now I rest. Like, and good on you, old man. Like, you rest, bro. You rest.
Alright, let's talk some world building.
Okay.
Because I think the world building in the Cyberpunk video game is pretty good. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to fuck that up, to be honest. Like,
especially because Cyberpunk is such a... I don't know, unique's not really the right word.
Enjoyable?
But as a setting, it does have these really strong touchstones that you can work from.
So, I think the thing that makes any sort of like futuristic video game feel really fresh and new every time is the fact that you have a big ballpark to play with, right? Yeah. Your interpretation of what is possible in that era is very, very much open to interpretation.
True.
It's never going to be like Star Wars and Star Trek feel very different for a number of reasons. The technology is different, the universal politics is different, etc., etc. Same with like Cyberpunk and like trying to think of another Cyberpunk style medium. Oh my god.
I mean, why not 40k?
That's
going to have that
Harrison Ford in it.
Oh, Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Yeah.
They have a lot of similarities between those two universes.
It's a similar genre. Yeah.
In fact, there's actually a reference to Blade Runner in Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Where there's like an android like passed out on a rooftop and it's raining. Even if when you go into the building, it's sunny outside. Very funny. They feel very similar and yet very distinctly different. Which I think is really critical, but like also not that challenging to do.
That's a really interesting point. The parallels between Blade Runner and Cyberpunk is a different approach to the question of what is a human. Yes. Really. Because in Blade Runner, there are living things that are created to replicate human life. And the discussion is...
are they human or not?
Yeah. Does this count as a life form? Whereas in Cyberpunk, it's how far can we push the human form before it is no longer considered. Yeah, you become an organic, full Borg.
Yeah, it's like how you still
creature.
It's like, would you consider Adam Smasher to be a human?
It's the ship of Theseus argument, is it? Like if you change
pretty much
change all the parts of the ship.
Yeah, that or the broom. It's like if you have a broom, you take away the head and the handle. Is it still the same broom?
Yeah.
But yes, that is the ship of Theseus in a nutshell.
So I guess that's like the main thing. In this specifically, in Edgeworth, I can't speak to Cyberpunk. I didn't really interact with Adam Smasher yet. But it doesn't feel like Adam Smasher, like we're supposed to question whether or not Adam Smasher is human. He's just villain. And I think him not being human serves the plot better than us questioning about whether or not he's human. Even though David directly asks him, he goes, heard you went full organic because there's still a brain in there somewhere. But I feel like there isn't any real conversation about the soul, or like, even though David probably pushed himself as far away from being human as he possibly could in that period of time, he was still incredibly motivated by love, an incredibly human trait.
Yes.
Whereas Adam Smasher displays no compassion for other creatures.
I think the thing that shows the humanity in Cyberpunk is the cyberpsychosis. Because that is a subconscious reaction to your brain being overloaded by stimulus from the technology.
Well, in both those cases, in Maine's cyberpsychosis, even in his fully isolated desert landscape, all he cares about is his girl.
Yeah.
And then same for David.
And that's what I think is very, very critical, is that those characters, they are still human. Whereas Adam, he doesn't have that issue anymore.
No.
He's not a cyberpsycho because he's not a human anymore. He doesn't have those emotions, those feelings that he once had.
Yeah.
Which is where I think that very fine line is drawn, right? Is that the difference between humanity and reality is emotion.
Yeah.
Or the humanity and technology is emotion.
Yeah.
And psychosis, while violent and aggressive, is still expression of emotion.
Yeah, well, if anything, it's a removal of your ability to handle your emotions.
Yeah, it's just being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's literally just you being overwhelmed by all of the input that's coming from everything that you have attached to you.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I think I would not call Adam Smasher a human. I would not say he is. I would just say he's a thing. He's an it. It is a thing.
Yeah. And I think the other categorical parallel that we get is Ghost in the Shell, where the Major's character constantly is like, am I really human at all? I don't really... Yeah, like she goes through this same kind of discovery journey.
Yeah.
Where she doesn't feel human. She's kind of numb to everything, and she's really trying to connect in with things in her life. Whereas the main villain is an AI that's come to life. And the whole argument from the AI is like, just because I don't like bleed and sneeze and shit myself, I'm still a living thing. Do I deserve to die just because I don't look like you, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
And I feel like that same thing kind of parallels in this as well. And maybe all of this specific genre of sci-fi is what is a man, you know?
Yeah, what is a person?
Yeah.
Like Blade Runner, perfect example, right? Is that like, so in Cyberpunk we have a lot of people trying to be robots. Like they're trying to be closer and closer to technology, so it's easier to do what they want. We have the inverse happening in Blade Runner, where robots are trying more and more to be human.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting dynamic, right? If those two worlds were to ever meet, it's just like a match made in heaven, right?
I feel like it would be... I don't know. I wouldn't say it would be a match made in heaven. I feel like it would be four different groups with really different goals.
But that's the thing, right? Is each of those groups being like fundamentally established is very good. Because like you get to see in a match made in heaven in the terms of like narrative storytelling, having multiple different perspectives on a similar issue is always really, really good because you get multiple takes on it. It's like having any sort of conversation where you're discussing a dilemma, like a moral dilemma, right? Yeah. So many people get caught up in the fact of being right that they don't stop and think about what does it mean to be right? Like what things do I have to do? Like what do I have to understand or act on to be correct? You know what I mean? And what is right? You know what I mean? Because I feel personally that what is correct is a matter of perspective. It's just based on your opinion. Everybody is right. Yeah. In their own way, you know. But yeah, from your entire specific point of view, right? You're always acting in service of yourself. Exactly. But in Blade Runner, right, it's basically Deckard exists from his specific point of view right up until a second one is introduced to him, and then he has a dilemma. Yeah. Like, I feel like probably Cyberpunk would handle it in the same way. Or probably. Well, like Delamain is a perfect example of an AI. He's trying to become real. You like interact. That's the car. Yeah, that's the car service, the taxi service. You're given a bunch of missions to go like find his various versions. I think I did the first one. There's like 12. Okay. And then he's like, you can like delete all of them and integrate them into me, or you can set them free and delete me. Like, there's a few options, but basically you establish that Delamain is an AI. He's independent, and all of the various versions of his cars that are driving around, they're also all AI. So it's like, do I kill one life to save many? Do I kill all these little rogue lives to save the one independent one? It's a moral conundrum that you're presented with that also makes you question the railroad conundrum. Where you choose to the trolley problem. Yeah. So like my perspective on that is what happens until you touch it. Yeah. The moment you make a choice, the moment you take action, it becomes your problem. Yeah. If you walk away from it, what happens. It has nothing to do with you. I disagree with that. That conflicts with one of Newton's 3 laws. Asimov's 3 laws. A robot cannot allow through action or inaction for a human to come to harm. Sure, I wasn't talking about a robot specifically but acting. I'm saying to hold ourselves to the same standard with the trolley problem is basically you're forced in a no-win scenario. That's the point of the trolley problem. And no matter whether or not you take an action or not, you lose. And the idea is to
kind of grade
Do you lose a game if you don't play though?
how bad it is. Well, you not playing is you making a choice.
Well, I mean, it's inaction. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
so if the trolley is set up and
okay,
6 people are on one track and nothing is on the other track,
sure,
and you don't touch the thing.
But that's a completely different situation. That is a completely different situation.
Yeah.
The thing is, right, am I preventing someone from dying or am I actively murdering someone? Is the situation I'm looking at. Am I a bystander to an accident or am I an accessory to murder? Is the difference that I look at.
I feel
because the moment is so if there's 50 people sitting along this ridge, all of whom could interact with this switch, and I'm the one that walks over and flips the switch, I've just been an accessory to murder. I have just killed someone.
Yeah.
If I stand there and watch,
you are equally unculpable as the other.
I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Which I get, like, morally is incorrect.
Yeah.
But the question is like, if the train is set to kill the one person and there's 5 there, do I flip it to save the one person? No, I just leave it, right?
Yeah.
Morally. See, the situation is always set up. It's like, there's a train about to run over 5 people. You could flip the switch and kill one person. What if it's the inverse, right? Do I just let these 5 people die so this one person can live? I'm more obligated to pull the switch and kill the one person then, right?
Well, it depends. Usually the scenario is set up in such a way to make you think about...
both sides.
To make them feel equal.
Sure.
Like, it might be your mother is the one person or whatever.
But, like, yeah, so the thing is, right, most of the scenario is, like, the train's going to run over the 5 people, and you have to sacrifice the person you care about to save 5 people. Ethically, would you do it? If it's inverse, where it's like the train is going to run over one person, would you flip it the other way to kill 5 people to save this one? Because that's a very different dynamic, right? It creates a whole different, like, fundamental problems. Because it's like, this person's going to die if I don't act, but if I do act, I'm killing 5 people.
Yeah.
Which is a more difficult way to bear.
We got so far away on this tangent, I can't remember how we got...
We're talking about the things that define humanity. Or, like, how humanity is established.
The moral choice of it.
The moral conundrum of becoming human or choosing not to be human.
Well, tying this back to, is Adam Smash a human or not? Because he doesn't display any kind of empathy for other humans. I think he would be agnostic to the problem.
He'd just walk away. He'd just be like, if anything, he'd be like,
someone was
flick
like,
it onto the
hang
5
on,
people.
Someone's going to die if you don't interact with the train. He's like, huh?
But it's going to kill 5 people, right?
Why do I care?
Yeah, exactly. Because he's not a human.
Yeah.
Whereas we as humans, we have to look at that situation and be like, okay, how do I? What do I?
So is humanity a presence of empathy?
To an extent, yeah. Because everybody has some level of empathy, right? I mean, everybody does.
I've seen things on the internet.
Sure. But the thing is empathy is not, I'm empathetic to everything that exists, right? Yeah. Empathy can be limited to a certain thing.
Yeah.
Right? Not everybody's empathetic towards their mother. Not everybody's empathetic towards starving children. You know, like, there's empathy happens in different categories.
I feel like it's definitely one of the cornerstones. And I think that it definitely is something that comes up when you are discussing as well, like an AI is a sentient creature or not. Because, like, there's both empathy, there's also, like, self-preservation. Actually, in science, there's a specific list of criteria for which something is to be considered alive. And I think the main one that makes like a program AI a problem is, one of the main ones is something to survive consumes fuel and gives off... I'm really butchering this. Other people that have done science one time were really mad at me. But I remember that it was explained to me with the comparison as a car, where all the pretty much all of the criteria for something being alive that you could apply to a car with relative success. And the main one being that it guzzles fuel and it puts out carbon dioxide fumes. Okay. But an AI doesn't do that. But an AI can do a lot of the emotional work. I mean, in fiction, it can do a lot of the emotional work that a human can do. It can do like a lot of these other criteria.
So if I have an AI whose power source is a car, does that mean it's alive?
It would help. It would tick another box.
Exactly. Like, It's like how many...
But like an AI in a body, like Adam Smasher, right, comes closer to meeting those criteria, then, I mean, I would say Delman's probably further away than Adam Smasher is.
I mean, but are his kids? Because they're an AI in a car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's an interesting, like, difference, but it's, like, very similar. You know what I mean? Like, those characters are very, very different in terms of their, like, mentality, their perception, all those sort of things. But structurally, in terms of, like, what we identify as living or human, they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
Like, it's very hard to draw that line. But in a narrative standpoint, obviously, when you're creating a story, you can establish the prerequisite for what you think a human is, or what you think a being is.
Blade Runner does that.
Yeah.
Blade Runner, I guess part of the whole narrative is that they're trying to reconcile what their definition of human is.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're vehemently like replicants are not human. Like,
but at the same time, the replicants the whole time are trying to be like, we are.
Yeah.
At least we are alive. We may not be human.
Well, I guess that's the crescendo of the story.
Yeah.
Where the replicant is able to finally have an opportunity to present the argument.
Yeah.
To the.
He's like, this is what we've been trying to do the whole time.
Yeah.
Just never let us explain.
Which I feel like Cyberpunk doesn't deal with that in the same way. It's like,
to be fair,
yes, I'm human the whole time, but you're slowly losing faith in how strong the argument is.
It's going the opposite direction, right? We have like humans becoming robots versus robots becoming human, which is very different. Because like, if you are something, the line where you stop being something is very different.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
true.
Whereas if you're not something, you're trying to be something, there's a threshold you gotta hit, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like the extension of how far away from a banana can you be before you stop being a banana? Like, is a banana smoothie still a banana? No.
I really like that comparison. I was talking about this before because a friend of mine made a trivia game, and in the trivia game, you mentioned like Trivia Pursuit, how you've got like A, B, C, and D, or whatever, you pick one. But instead of it being right and wrong, there's a little bit wrong and a lot wrong. And there's a quote from The Big Bang Theory, which is like, it's a little bit wrong to say a tomato is a vegetable. Right. It's a lot wrong to say it's a suspension bridge.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the difference in like narrative perspective between those two stories, between Cyberpunk and Blade Runner. But obviously, like, there's a lot of similarities. Like, if you look at the cars that the main characters drive, like the straight up regular car that V drove in the trailer, very similar to the car that Harrison Ford drives. And there's just like lots of like little interesting perspectives. Like River feels very similar to like the police from Cyberpunk, from Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Like, he's very like, the law is here, but I'm kind of gonna work like out of you a little bit. But he still has like respect for authority and structure and all that sort of stuff. But he's like, I know sometimes I'm gonna have to cross the line, but I don't know. It's interesting. I like replicants or like artificial constructs didn't really come up that much in Cyberpunk. For the most part, it's just people with mods.
Yeah.
And like
they kind of hinted towards stuff in it's not the subnet. What's the old internet that was fractured and destroyed? They keep referencing this thing. It's like a big event that happened where, as an act of terrorism, the old internet was destroyed. And then they rebuilt it anew. But the part of Lucy's backstory is that she's conditioned to be able to dive in and investigate this area.
Yeah, she was designed to like fight demons, right?
Yeah, and they keep like bringing up this concept, and it's really, really interesting. And then they don't use it in a meaningful way.
Yeah. So the I think it's the Dark Wall. It's like this big like barrier thing that surrounds the internet.
Yeah.
That protects it from all the AI and the demons and stuff that are outside of the wall.
Yeah.
So a guy called Raish Bartmoss, who you actually find in a cooler box in the Cyberpunk game.
Yep. No, I've got up to that.
Basically, he's the one who like broke down all the security and stuff for the internet initially, and just like opened everything so anybody could access anything. There was no like private like files and stuff for corpos. Anybody could read anything, and that created like a massive fucking issue. So he got very dead, and yeah, basically they had to restructure everything and build up these new walls because all of these things that were locked away and got released, all these like hack programs and AIs that were being like worked on got released.
Yeah.
Yeah. They put up the big walls and.
Because I thought that was really interesting as a concept, and I feel like there's definitely something more that could be written that could explore
Expand on
in that category.
Yeah.
Because it felt like they lightly touched on it. It's one of those things where it's like this is really important. Okay, now forget about it. Yeah. You're like, oh fuck, what?
Yeah. I'm interested to see where Phantom Liberty takes us. I'm hoping for a little bit more in terms of like I would like a new place. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get a new place. I think what they're going to do is update a place that exists.
Yeah, that's also fine. It's still something new to explore. I think exploration is such a key, part of these games.
They were discussing it being Pacifica is going to get like updated or modernized or something, so it's more like in tune with the DLC. Not entirely sure on that. Don't quote me on it. But yeah, there's lots of interesting parallels between various cyber-themed media.
Yeah. Maybe there really is only 3 stories to tell.
Well, if you look at the differences in the overall story between like Cyberpunk, oh my god, I'm forgetting
Blade Runner.
Yeah. Don't know why I keep forgetting that. Like their stories are very different. Very, very different. There's a few messages that overlap. Same with Edge Runners. Right? If anything, I would say Edge Runners is probably closer to Blade Runner than Cyberpunk regular is. But like the way they go about telling the story is very different. The message is sort of similar, right? It's about finding who you are and like overcoming what you are to become better.
Yeah.
Or to achieve something, right?
The quest to find your true and best self.
Yeah. Which is kind of like every movie has that to a slight degree. But like these movies are more centered on that fact, right? Every story is a process of evolution.
It does feel like David's core journey.
Yeah. But yeah, that's very much everything I have now.
Okay.
So
cool.
I don't know where else to go with it.
No, that's fair enough. I do think that we did quite well cover a lot, and there is a lot there is a lot going on in Cyberpunk. I am curious to see what happens with the DLC. I am curious to see if they'll fucking make a season 2 of the show, even though I don't think that they would.
I don't think.
But I'm pretty sure watch it if they did.
I'm pretty sure they said they weren't going to do another one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hate it if they were like, here's another anime from the Cyberpunk universe. I'd be like, sick.
That's what I assume it would have to be.
I'd be fine with that.
It would actually be really funny if they like made a couple of seasons, but like one of the throwaway characters just is in all of them. Like the driver dude just survives everything somehow all the time.
Sure.
Or something like that to make it like a narrative frame.
They're just like, it's Adam Smasher in every single one.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, Adam Smash is the main. It's like his backstory or something in the sequel. But yeah, that's kind of it. This is about storytelling. And we actually fucking talked a lot more about storytelling in this one than last time.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe picking a better.
I think the thing is like
better topic.
Pokemon doesn't have a story. Not really.
No.
Like the story is very much second fiddle to the game, which is a point that we stress very much.
Very
so there's not much to talk about when it comes to the story of Pokemon because there isn't one.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but it's not.
It's
so relevant.
Yeah.
Whereas like Cyberpunk, Edge Runners, Blade Runner, all these are stories very well established and very well loved stories. Well, I mean, 2077, not so much, but
I enjoyed it.
Like most people like the story to an extent.
It's got good meme content in it.
Plenty of
Pretty much everything Anna de Armas does in that fucking movie is meme content.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, I don't know. What's next on the agenda?
I have a few in the chamber.
Okay.
No promises what of these things could happen or if they happen at all. Magic the Gathering is one that I want to talk about.
Yeah,
I know it'll have some of the same roadblocks that Pokemon.
Yeah, definitely.
But I still think that there's a conversation to be had there around how you can add storytelling to a game like that where you don't experience the story except through clippets.
Yeah.
Or
like third-party expansions.
Yeah. That's one I have been thinking about and want to do. And then there's going to be just like whatever we've watched. I want to make you watch Grind, which is a skateboarding movie from 2003.
Right, yep, we talked about this.
Now, the skateboarding aspect isn't super important.
It's like secondary to the story.
It's more like a fun, blokey road trip movie. But the character development is better than any other movie in existence, in my opinion. Which is crazy, because I'm like, I watched it as a kid and I was like, this is kind of cool. And then I rewatched it recently and I was like, wow, actually, this is fucking sick. This is the best movie ever.
Okay.
It's in my top 5, and there's a lot of other much better movies in my top 5, which is crazy that it still holds up like that. Yeah. I watched 1899 recently.
Okay.
I was thinking about bringing that one up, but I feel like it's going to be more me being angry about it rather than...
Probably avoid that one then.
Yeah, I'm talking about that one. Was there ones that you got something locked in the chamber?
Andor, definitely.
Yeah, because I still haven't watched that yet.
Yep.
So you did talk about this before. I did want to do an Andor versus Rogue One.
Yep.
If I hated Rogue One, will I enjoy Andor? Spoiler alert: Rogue One's dog shit. Sorry to say.
His opinion.
Andor based and correct, so.
Not based on not correct. But sure. One man's opinion. You
know? Yeah, one guy.
Yeah, one bloke. Andor was very good. Andor was very good.
I've not heard anything bad about it. I've heard nothing but constant raves about it.
That was the thing, is like, Andor was one of those things where it's like, my expectation was here. And then what was delivered was like up here. And I was just like, okay. Like, and I don't know if it seems like up here, but it's like sort of like here. Because I was like, my expectations was like way lower. It was just much better than I thought it was going to be. I was really worried it was going to just be a generic like pew pew. Not at all.
Yeah.
It's like really good.
Save it for the pod.
I'm saving it for the pod. I'm just trying to convince you to watch it. You got to watch the pod first.
I don't know if I want to watch it before or after the pod. I think
you want to watch at least half.
I think doing both would be interesting.
Yeah,
recording one before and then recording one after.
The other one, Willow.
Yeah, I haven't started watching that yet.
That's fine.
I have seen the original movie.
It's only like 3 episodes out.
We got time.
Yeah,
there's time.
There's plenty of time. I think we do one on the movie. Like, we rewatch the movie or whatever.
Okay.
Just to refresh.
Yeah.
Sit down, talk about the movie.
And come back to the show.
What we want out of the show. Okay. Right? And then we watch the show.
Yeah, we need a whiteboard or something.
We had one.
Yeah, we did have one. But yeah, thanks for hanging out for our really low effort podcast. Hit that like button. Get in the comments.
Tell us which of those things you want to see.
Tell me, yeah, exactly. What you are hanging to see the most? How wrong I am about Rogue One.
Yeah, or if you have other suggestions of things you want us to like watch and or talk about.
I would just watch shit.
Like, yeah.
I went on a date the other day and she was like, "This really weird movie is my favorite movie." I'm like, "Oh, I'll watch it."
D&D is another thing. Like, storytelling for D&D is another thing we can discuss.
That was the thing that started the idea for this podcast.
So I've been a DM for like probably the better part of a decade.
Forever.
Done a lot of like self-made stories. So if that's something that people are interested in, they want to like learn that sort of shit, that's something we can definitely talk about.
Yeah.
We could even do one of these live if people wanted to like ask questions or something like that.
Yeah. So we are still finding our feet with the About Storytelling podcast. I think we're off to a good start.
Yeah, I think it's not horrible.
I'm pretty happy with this.
It's pretty easy just to talk shit for an hour.
Yeah.
Or however long it goes for.
However long this has been. Yeah. But we are going to end it here. So make sure that you hit all those things. All of this is going to be in a playlist. You can find all the details in the description about the other stuff that's going on this channel. But that's it. We're going to call it.
Peace.
Do you want to have a guess as to how many minutes that was? You were pretty on the money last time.
I reckon it was like an hour 15.
what was really funny was last time is I watch it back and then it comes to that moment at the end where I have to cut the end and I'm like, I kind of want to keep that in because that's really funny.
What was it?
I cut the video of the outro but kept the audio over it.
Yeah.
So it was like, it goes to the end credits thing.
Yeah.
125.
Oh, what do you think? I said it.
I thought we went short rather than